Excellence is continuous. It can be complex or simple. Each day is an open challenge to achieve success and turn adversity into opportunity. At RGF Executive Search Japan, we make winning a daily objective by aligning unique bilingual talents who invigorate organizations and drive sustainable growth. Excellence begins and ends with people. To execute your Japan recruitment relationship, contact us and let's begin.
Good evening and welcome to the webinar on accelerating market access to Japan. My name is Ryan Shepard, Associate Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences at RGF Executive Search Japan. And today I am introducing a very good friend and longtime client, Rob Claar, who is co-founder and CEO of HekaBio KK. As an executive search firm, we are primarily working with companies that are already in Japan, actively hiring for local bilingual talent. However, some of our conversations with prospective clients revolve around how to enter Japan because those companies want to make their innovations accessible to Japanese patients. But not all of them are in a position to do so yet. Some discovered different paths, such as working with distributors or licensing to partners in Japan. But there is another way around that, and that is a very unique solution that HekaBio offers to those companies, and ultimately to make healthcare innovation accessible to Japanese patients who need them. So it's my honor and privilege today to introduce Rob Claar. And as always, we're going to start with some insights from Rob about his business, about his story, what he's doing, and then open to Q&A so that our viewers can have an opportunity to ask Rob anything they like about the business, how he sees the market. And we hope that you're able to take away some insights from this today to help you make decisions in your own business, because after all, we're all in this industry for the betterment of healthcare. So, Rob, I'm going to bring you on screen right now. Thank you so much for being here today. It's an honor to be on the screen with you, and I'm going to take myself off the screen in a moment, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself and go ahead and bring your presentation onto screen when you're ready to do so. So, Rob, screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's a great pleasure as always. As you said, I'm hoping that what I talk about today can be useful and insightful for some of the attendees today. So thanks a lot for attending. Ryan, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to also the whole team at RGF Executive. So we'll get started. HekaBio, Miracles Through Partnership. Today I'd like to talk about, there we go. I'd like to introduce myself a little bit, and then I'd like to share some why Japan, why overseas innovators in drugs and devices and IVD should be considering Japan, why Japan is a must succeed market for them, and then why not Japan? And part of this is really not why people shouldn't come to Japan, but why people don't, or some of the reasons that are typically seen as challenges to coming into the market and succeeding. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then talk about the unique solution that we offer to overseas companies for making traction and creating value in Japan. That's the HekaBio approach. So about myself, I've been here in Japan since 1987. I went to college in the US. In 1987, I came over to Japan for cultural interest and ended up doing a number of things, and quickly, by a number of coincidences, found myself in the healthcare business and didn't ever look back from that. So on the right side of the page, this is a brief version of my my CV. At the bottom, Sanwa Research Institute. This is a think tank owned by the Sanwa Bank back in the late 80s and early 90s. I was an analyst there, and I had the great fortune to work on a team that was writing white papers for the Ministry of Health. And we were figuring out ways to research, ways to come up with new insights to present to the government about what should Japan be doing for the aging of society? How should Japan be preparing for that eventuality? What should Japan do about the declining birth rate? How should Japan think about the declining working population among women, and how to get women back into the workplace while not decreasing the birth rate? So a lot of these things that, as you know well, have not been solved. But very academic, and gave me the opportunity to travel all over Japan. During that process, I fell in love with Japan. During that process, I also became great friends with a number of doctors, key opinion leader doctors around the country, and understood their frustration with not being able to get their hands on the latest and greatest worldwide innovations that their friends in Germany, France, the US had access to, and they wanted to have access to those. And so I started helping them with some of their research papers. I started helping them, or talking with them anyway, about how to solve this lag and loss for technology. And that's become the mission that I've approached from different facets over my career. So in 1992, I started a healthcare market research company called Junicon. Then from there, ran that for 20 years. And Vorpal Technologies is a CRO that some people may have heard of. We've sold that company 2 years ago to a US CRO called MICRA, MCRA. So that's under their banner now. But during the 10 years of running that venture, we were able to secure 50 approvals in medtech in Japan. So very, very proud of that, being able to provide that access not only to companies, but our friends, the doctors, and most importantly, the patients. And then with HekaBio, we started the company in 2016. And what we're doing there is we're an in-licensing bioventure. So we have drugs, we have devices, mostly devices. We are securing Japan commercial rights by investing in minority investments in the companies, and then getting them through to approval and commercial readiness. For our sales, we actually partner with Japanese pharmaceutical and device companies for the actual sales and promotion. So that's our business model. One other thing to mention, and this is how I'm connected originally to Ryan, is that I'm a board director on Hope International Development Agency. That's how I know Ryan's dad and became connected to Ryan. So thanks a lot, Ryan. So why Japan? As you know, and this is, I know everybody knows this, so this is not something too surprising, but Japan is the most aging society around the world, 30% of the population over 65. What you may not be aware of is that the next closest major country is Italy, and it's a full 7% less population percentage of 65 and over. So Japan really leads the way. So Japan is like the canary in the coal mine for aging societies. How can Japan survive and maintain the greatest healthcare results around the world without collapsing under the economic pressures with this amount of concentration in the aging population? So using OECD and other international data, we see that Japan is currently spending 11.4% of GDP. We actually disagree with this number, and I'll show you later how we have that number slightly under 10%. But these are having to do with the exchange rate, the yen-dollar exchange rate, etc. But it's a good comparison with large companies around the world: France, Germany, Italy, UK, USA. Japan's healthy life expectancy and overall life expectancy are the highest in this group. I think most of you on this call will probably know that. It's a good reason to be aware and be interested in succeeding in Japan, because it is such an important market for these reasons. So here we are with Japan's leading position in overall healthy life expectancy and overall life expectancy. So the growth also of the ultra-aged population over the next decade is going to put further strain on healthcare costs. This, if you dig into the government's data, you'll find this, but it's really the next 10 years that are the key for Japan. So when we see the explosion of people over 75 as their percentage of the population, and those 85 years and over, the growth is over the next 10 years. So from 2035, we see plateauing. How is Japan going to deal with this next 10 years is the key thing. We also see long-term care recipients needing more and more access to that. We know that Japan is short of workers who are qualified to work as long-term care providers. We know that Japan has facility limitations as well. So how can the government deal with that as well? It's hard to build enough facilities. It's hard to train enough workers. It's hard to issue enough visas to overseas workers who are willing to come in and play in this market. But all of these are parts of the solution. Now, this one is always interesting to me because we see that if you just look at these numbers and you say that, okay, for the population, Japan has roughly the correct numbers of doctors and nurses. Germany is a bit higher than the rest, but Japan is right in line with USA, and the other ones are slightly behind. So all good, one might think from that. But the real story is this. Japanese people love to go to the doctor, hospitals, clinics, and we have great access, as you know. So Japanese patients are going to the doctor on average more than 11 times a year. The US, it's 3.4 times per year. So quite different in terms of behaviors. So the same number of doctors and nurses and technicians and other healthcare workers are covering more than 3 times the number of patient flow. And the number of hospital beds is also strikingly different, where we see that Japan has so many hospital beds. Now, this number overall is declining over time because Japan has, through policies and other market factors, has driven and encouraged a decline in the number of registered hospital beds. But that doesn't happen overnight or very quickly. So we still see that Japan has a lot more beds than other major countries. So what this means to us is that if you look at the comparison to the United States and Japan, you'll see that not only are the healthcare workers covering 3 or more times the visitations by patient numbers, but they're also covering 4 times the number of hospital beds. So how can they possibly do it? Particularly now that the human resources worker laws have kicked in this year that say that hospitals are also going to be treated the same as companies in terms of not enabling unlimited overtime work. Of healthcare workers. So this is very important to understand that Japan is at this really important crossroads right now for resources and overstrained system. So keep that in mind as we think about what kind of solutions may be most appropriate for Japan. And some of the reasons why people don't come to Japan, in my experience and over the last 3 decades of talking to companies and understanding why they don't come, well, some of them think, well, Japan is expensive. Now, that's changed quite a bit since the tourism has really picked up and the yen rate has gone the way it has. So that's not necessarily the case anymore. But it's also viewed as lack of transparency and difficulty and lack of transparency of the regulatory process is a common thing that people believe overseas. And we talk with the PMDA, the regulatory authorities, about this as well. They understand the issue and are opening up offices overseas in order to help bridge that gap of understanding. Because in our minds, since dealing with the regulatory authorities here is what we do every day, we think that Japan is very transparent we see changes in the FDA as being more drastic than changes in the PMDA. We see the number of reviewers having doubled in recent memory at the PMDA, and review periods going down here. So we see Japan quickly gaining parity with the ease of getting a regulatory approval compared to the FDA, and improved compared to Europe. And so we think Japan is a great place to come earlier than most companies are thinking about it. And another one that people do not come to Japan for is people have images of certain of their friends or people they may know that have made a mistake in Japan. So sometimes companies will come here and want to do a quick licensing deal. Okay, if you can get your dream desire large licensing deal done, that would be great. But most people can't get that done, and so they're thinking that maybe we should just wait 5 years until moving forward. So they're thinking, okay, if we can't get a good deal done, Japan's not transparent. We're never going to understand it. We can't get a regulatory approval, so we're just going to wait. And this is the issue that we face. Now, to give more emphasis around the economics that we have here, we're right in the middle of this graph here, 2024, and we see that healthcare expenditure in Japan in yen terms is 46 trillion, or right around $400 billion, and it's hovering around 8 or 9% of GDP. And what we also notice from this chart is that the working population is in decline. As you know, Japan's healthcare expenditures are reliant upon the graduated tax that you pay from your salary. So this is what Japan needs is better solutions to save money out of the system that also bring in worker efficiency and also better health economic outcomes. This is another one that appears in newspapers quite a lot in different forms here and there, but the drug lag on the left, we see the number of new molecular entities, new drugs that are available in US and Europe are at the top, new drugs that are available in Japan are at the bottom, and we see this enormous lag and loss that's going on. What we also learn from industry associations is that drug programs that are in phase 2 or later, only 30% of them have a Japan component that's already been defined. What that means is that the current 40% of drugs being available in Japan may slip further down to the 30% level, and this is something that nobody wants to see happen. So what can we do to change that? And on the right, we see something that's talked about less, but it's this is single-year approvals of new category medical devices. These are FDA approvals on the blue, and in the pink, it's PMDA approvals. New category medical device approvals are going down every year in Japan, if you can believe that. I think this is shocking, and it's something that we should change. So what we've got here is the ultra-aging society being a significant challenge, but also an opportunity. So who can bring better efficiency, better use of hospital and out-of-hospital resources, and bring in health economic benefits to the aging society? Those people will and should win in Japan. We need to do something to help the healthcare staff efficiency. And also, data sharing is something that we believe strongly needs to improve in Japan. More efficient solutions for patient selection, for example, for clinical trials or analyzing data, better treatment selection, and also patient management ongoing. These solutions are needed. And when it comes to the issue of another issue why some companies don't come to Japan, it's lack of understanding of the reimbursement system. So we know that Japan has a single payer reimbursement system, national health insurance, but how is that decided? And the lack of understanding on that is something that keeps people out. So both the government and industry need to do something to improve this, but I think we can all agree that whoever brings an innovation that can bring benefit to society and also clinical outcome improvements should be paid for those. And also the government should be able to realize savings from those improved benefits. So this is our approach for partnering. Our mission is we're highly motivated by empowering patients with accelerated access to global healthcare innovations. So we're out in the field all the time talking about how great Japan is to innovators in Europe, Israel, US. And we do that through our core values of collaboration, creativity, and commitment. Core activities that we're doing on a daily basis is identifying great innovations. We make minority investments in those companies in order to secure the commercial license, and we accelerate market approval and commercial readiness. I mentioned before that for sales and promotion, we're partnering with large Japanese or international organizations here in order to do that promotion in the best way. We have 3 revenue streams in our business. Since we're an investor in the companies, we do have investment returns. Since we are also doing CRO services, although we're not a CRO or a consulting company, we're only working on our strategic portfolio. However, in some cases, we are receiving some service revenue. We consider that a stabilizer. And on the bottom right, this is the large one, commercialization revenue, which is recurring, and we do commercial sales through large strategic partner organizations. So I talk about that as if it's in the past tense. The plan is in the past tense and ongoing, that's for sure. But we're just entering our commercial phase, and in 2025, we'll have 3 programs that are commercialized. And this is our traction of what we've got in terms of background and current portfolio. Veteran team with a track record of more than 50 approvals. And we see a proprietary deal flow of more than 200 programs per year. So with a small team, we're very busy juggling the assessment and due diligence on those programs. We can't do a deep dive on everything. We need to take a quick look and quickly filter. But we believe we're in a great position to help Japan solve its device and drug lag and loss. And we also believe that the programs that we're looking not only solve an issue for the Japanese government that wants to solve these lag and loss issues, but also for the patients who are waiting for access to these programs. This is our portfolio in cardiology, neurology, oncology, and ophthalmology. And the access that we have is really built over the last 3 decades, but it's corporate partners and word of mouth. Hey, if you're thinking about Japan, talk to these guys is a very common way of introduction that we're getting. We're very fortunate for that. VCs introduce their portfolio companies to us or come to us directly if they're trying to de-risk their portfolio companies by making traction in Japan. We're happy to help them with that. We have advisors and shareholders around the world who provide us with introductions. Incubators who have a number of a cohort of startup companies that bring us introductions that way is also common for us. And also direct doctor introductions coming to us is also one of our favorite ways to accelerate introduction. Government agencies as well, coming from the US, EU consulates, Israel as well, and also the Japanese government. And then law firms. So if you can imagine, a law firm has just completed a submission for intellectual property. It also covers Japan. They may reach out to their client and say, hey, why don't you talk to these guys about making some moves in Japan? And we're happy to look at those. Our partnering process is review and selection. With 200 programs, that's like 1 a day. We do need to move through that initial screening very quickly. We look and make sure that there are data in patients, and we want to make sure that there's an expected inflection point of company value within 3 years. We do our due diligence, company technology and financials. We also More importantly, actually, is the mission alignment with the management team. In Japan, since we have the fully reimbursed healthcare system and we have the national health insurance system, we need to make sure that our reputation in Japan is fully protected and not damaged in any way by the partners that we choose to collaborate with. We need to make sure that their desire to commercialize in Japan is very much in sync with how the Japanese government is thinking and with how we are thinking as well. We make our minority investments. We intend to get 1 to 5% equity and exclusivity in Japan. Then we do the operations, clinical regulatory development to get those through to approval over the finish line. We're often contributing beyond Japan to help companies with their outside of Japan or global clinical and regulatory strategy as well. And the upside is investment returns and then the commercial sales once the programs are approved. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your interest, and I hope that was useful for some people. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's been fascinating to observe how the company has evolved over the years since it was originally, the designated marketing authorization holder, which was Vorpal Technologies, and just how you've managed to pivot to maximize the value you can bring to patients and your partners. You mentioned a few slides back about de-risking portfolio companies by making traction in Japan. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that point a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can imagine, so you're a VC fund, and depending on your mandate, you may be coming in at seed round or Series A or whatever it is. But if you've got a program that is only operating in the U.S. or only in another country, it may make sense for them to also at the same time make traction in Japan. We think, and we've done some analysis on this, but it's not research paper ready necessarily. But we believe that a free and clear Japan approval is going to bring that company an additional 5 to 10% value addition to their corporate value. So this is a de-risking event, just bringing corporate value. But it's also, if you can manage to get something, call it a PMDA meeting that gives you some clarity on what the development path is going to be. If it's a device and you realize that, okay, we can use the overseas data for this, or we can do a study that's it's an international collaborative study between the US and Australia and Japan, and Japan only needs to produce 10% of the cases, then that may mean that the company can save overall budget on their clinical trial and get simultaneous approval in the US, Australia, and Japan. That's a win for everyone. So we can put that brain power into that discussion. And I think we're highly valued by that sort of role that we can play.
And of course, the brain power you've put in those discussions has been very evident in the past with, at one point, and maybe you still are, representing the highest number of new category and or first improved with clinical devices with the regulatory authorities in Japan. Is that statement accurate?
Well, it was under Vorpal Technologies, which we sold 2 years ago. Yes, thanks for mentioning that.
And of course, that speaks to your creativity. I'm sure the creative leadership that you still exhibit today. I was wondering if you could give our viewers an insight into what that creative brain power looks like to the regulatory authorities, and how companies looking at Japan with new category improved with clinical devices or first-in-class products, how can they get inside the minds of the Japanese authorities to advance innovative product regulations?
Yeah. So a couple of comments, maybe 3 comments here. The first one is we do find the PMDA to be a very collaborative and creative organization. They want to be in that role. Often they're not. And so engaging them and having high expectations for them, and bringing them new technology, letting them see it, letting them react in an informal way, is a good way to forge those relationships and encourage their own creativity. We also like to early on engage Japanese key opinion leader doctors to encourage that as well. So we think that and then another thing is, whenever we can turn a program into an international collaborative project, the PMDA also likes that a lot, because they've got as their mandate a desire to have more quick approvals in Japan. And if we can do that in a collaborative way with the FDA or other authorities, that's very much what they want as well. So in a way, we view them as a partner, because we need them to get things done. They need us and others like us to meet their mandates as well. If we can treat every project as a collaborative one, where it's not sort of a tug of war, it's how can we think about this together to get this over the finish line in the quickest and safest way. So that's how we think about it. And the other way is, we need a lot of creativity in our organization. And of course, it goes without saying, but it's not all coming from me. So we're a veteran organization. We need to listen to everyone's opinion in the office. By the way, HekaBio is a 12-person organization, and the average age, I won't say the average age, I'll just say that we're all veterans. So everyone needs and deserves to have their opinion fully heard, because those guys are the subject matter experts, right? So we can think about, I may be very good at putting different threads together, but someone else in the office is going to be much better at, hey, here's one thing we should be thinking on the clinical side. Here's something we should be thinking on the quality side, safety side, regulatory side. So we need to value everyone's opinion and bring things forward that way. So we have a very collaborative working environment. I think, for me, it makes work fun, and hopefully it's that way for the rest of the organization. There, when you're dealing with a regulated industry, of course there's stress and there's disappointments, and
Sure.
things don't always move as quickly as we want. But when we see that everyone is collaborating and being valued, I think that's a way to ensure that we're doing the best that we can for the partners and for Japan.
Fantastic. And you talked earlier about health outcomes being a key part of accelerating market access to Japan. Health technology assessments, cost effectiveness assessments. What's your view on those initiatives, if you will, and what role those frameworks play in accelerating approvals today?
Yeah, so I think this is an area where Japan really needs to improve, because we see that there's less sophistication here in Japan, and there's less ability to be transparent and to provide early guidance on what pricing may be. So there's plenty of, there's pricing experts that you can go to, and you can get a great assessment that has some usefulness, but it doesn't have the backbone of the government behind it, or the promise behind it. So that's something that we would very much like, and this is a wish on my part. It's not some knowledge that the world is moving in this direction, but what we would love to see is a more formal feedback process with the government about what type of reimbursement could be expected, and it could be, the earlier the better. So if you were to be able to go to some people within the MHLW, I'm not sure who it would be, who could play a role that says, okay, here's a target product profile, right? So if this drug or this device does this, and this is our view of the health economic benefit of it, and here's our view on how much adverse events you're going to save, and over the lifetime of the patient, this is what you're going to expect. if we can present that and then have the government react to, okay, if you can show that in a clinical trial, then this is how much we would be willing to pay for that. Now, can you imagine if Japan had that before you go into your clinical negotiation process with the clinical trial design, where you had feedback on reimbursement in advance of that? I would love it if that were the way that things work. But as you know now, we are stuck with assumptions and our own calculations and relying on experts, and yes, talking with the people who are our counterparts inside the MHLW, but really an inability to have clarity on what pricing is going to look like in cases where there's no predicate. When you get to until you get over the finish line. Now, I think the issue here is more severe in devices than it is with drugs, from my current understanding. But if you don't have a predicate product, and so you're using a cost plus type of model, that may give you one answer, but there's no guarantee that the government's going to agree to reimburse at that level. So I think really, if the government were able to do something that gave innovators more clarity about what could be expected at the time of commercial launch, this would really be a win. And it would, I believe, almost overnight solve a huge amount of the drug lag and loss that's there now, and the device lag and loss.
Yeah, it's the reoccurring story over the entire time I've been in this industry. So thanks for shedding some light on that and the reality of the pain there. We have a question from one of our viewers, and it's around how you find partners. The question is, I know you've mentioned a list of ways on how you get partnerships right now, mostly through word of mouth. However, I'm curious how you were able to acquire partnerships at the start, and what was your strategy to identify who are in need of your partnership and guidance to enter Japan?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, now it's actually hard to remember back to the very beginning. But I would say, we started out by having a CRO, which was an operating entity, consulting model. And then at the same time, we were building the commercial model on the side of that. And so I thought that I could run that business under one roof as we went. And so what we were doing is, the companies who were advanced enough to be able to pay us for consulting fees for the CRO business. So companies mainly out of California, Boston, Austin, Texas, and Minnesota that were willing to pay the ongoing fees for us to get their approval in Japan. That was one category. And for the most part, we got those by attending certain industry events. Eventually, we don't really need to attend those events anymore because it's word of mouth in bringing those in. But then the other aspect of it was, okay, if there's a company that is already far enough advanced, probably they've got U.S. approval, commercial sales, et cetera, to pay us to be their CRO. Back when we had the CRO business, Vorpal Technologies. But there's another group of companies that's a little bit earlier. So how do we look at them and understand that those companies don't have the ability to pay us? But we think that even though they're earlier, we think that there's a great risk-reward profile there, and we would love to partner with them. So that's how we got our first portfolio companies into HekaBio. It was by separating them out into the can pay, cannot pay companies. But it was really using the same network of those 5 areas being, so Tel Aviv, Boston, Minneapolis, San Francisco Bay Area, and Austin, Texas. So just being plugged into those networks, those ecosystems, and getting that word of mouth is really the way that we did that. And so it becomes trickier when you're trying to engage with a client or a partner company that's not a paying client, right? So you need to be much more careful about how you're assessing the risk, assessing the technology. And so we started out being very confident in our ability to at least assess the regulatory risk. So we could look at a program and understand where the company is so far, what kind of clinical data they have, and our clinical team could say, okay, we think that this is going to be approvable. We think we can start the PMDA process in X number of months, and then we model that out in terms of, what does the business look like. But we do need to be much more careful, because if there's if there's not a lot of clinical data, or the clinical data is very early, then we're taking a significant risk on those. And so I would say that the key factor for us to be able to pick the right companies for our portfolio is impeccable timing. Because if we get to a company that we love and they love us, but they're already too far advanced that they don't need someone to come in with a minority investment, or they're ready to go pay a CRO to get the approval, then that's too late for us, because they're going to be either bootstrapping, do it themselves, or they're going to get acquired by somebody, or they're going to partner with a big Japanese distributor or a pharma company. So we will never be able to compete when it's a competition for who's got the deepest pockets. So we need to avoid those by being early, but we also need to avoid risk by being very smart about how early we are.
Yeah.
I hope that's a partial answer anyway.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I mean, us too. We're not a global executive search firm. We're a Japan-centric search firm. So part of the reason we're having this webinar right now is so that we can plant seeds out there for companies and organizations that may be looking to hire in the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
And if they choose a direct option, then to call RGF Executive Search, look up Brian Shepard, and we'd be happy to talk to you. Another question we have from a viewer is, what are the biggest costs for the MHLW? For example, dental, hospital, prescriptions, doctor visits, etc., and where can innovation play a role in cost efficiencies?
Great question. So if you put in, so in the simplest terms are that 30% of the whole healthcare cost is drugs and devices. So the rest is healthcare services. So about 10% is long-term care. So that adds up to 40. So you've got 60%, which is the rest. So that's hospital services. So it's really the doctor visits. And if you recall, the huge number of hospitals, huge number of beds in those hospitals, and the number of patient visits to those hospitals, and the number of patients who are using long-term care. The overutilization is what is really driving those costs. Another way to look at it is that chronic disease, for example, COPD or heart failure, diabetes, kidney failure, including dialysis. These are some of the most costly overall conditions for the system. So if you've got a patient with any one of those, they're going to be costing the healthcare system anywhere from 5 to 10 times a normal average patient who doesn't have one of those chronic diseases. So it's chronic disease early identification, and chronic disease efficient monitoring is a great way to save money out of the system. We would love to see more solutions for, I mentioned earlier, data management, data mining, hospital data sharing, and we would love to see solutions for keeping patients out of hospital. So early identification, early understanding of potential exacerbations, so that ideally a patient's a doctor could identify very early on that, wait a minute, this patient the drug that they're supposed to be taking is either not working as well as we thought, or we need to increase the dose, or maybe there's too much, we need to reduce the dose, or patient's forgotten to take it, and we can tell that based on certain biomarkers that we're collecting remotely, things like that. Or we see that this patient, based on the sound of their voice, is developing early signs of a potential asthmatic event or a COPD exacerbation. Look out, this patient is going to land in the ER within 3 days. If we have that information and can intervene early in order to save money, that would be a great win. I think, right now, Japan knows this, but Japan is very slow right now at providing reimbursement guidance and reimbursement wins for those digital health and software as a medical device solutions. So that's a big one where we need the innovators and we need the government to collaborate on finding those solutions and bringing them to play.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to go a little off cuff here, Rob. I hope you don't mind. And that is, the concept of digital therapeutics first came to me talking to you pre-COVID, and some of the programs that you were assessing and engaging at that time. That all quietened down with COVID and the liquidity crunch and so on, but seems to be gently making a comeback. What's your read on that space right now, and what would be your message to digital therapeutics companies with the kinds of predictive technologies you've just described, looking at Japan and eyeing Japan? What would be your message to them?
Yes, so I think getting engaged with key opinion leader doctors early on is very key. Not only in hospital doctors, but also the medical association, so the clinic doctors. Everybody needs to be satisfied that this is not only going to be helpful for the country, but also good for their personal interests or fiefdom as well. So this is a tricky issue. There is an industry group now, which is digital health industry group, which is primarily Japanese companies and is being led by a Japanese pharmaceutical company. Those guys are doing good work for advocating. I believe, though, so I'm just giving a little bit of background, but my advice is really that I think companies coming in should look at what the most likely predicate is for reimbursement. And we can look at certain home use medical devices as one such predicate. And then we can look at, of course, everyone would talk about Cure app as being the predicate for the smoking cessation that got approved. But I would also say that there have been some cases recently where there's an approval, but the reimbursement was not accepted. Why? We can only speculate unless we know someone who's top management of those companies. But we would want to recommend that companies would have a strategy for the reimbursed healthcare market as well as the non-reimbursed healthcare market. And I even cringe at myself when I say that, because I'm certainly a believer in the fully reimbursed national healthcare system, and I want the best socialistic system in the world to continue. But if you even look at Cure app, and you'll find on their website that they've got a reimbursed version and they've got a non-reimbursed version, which is for health maintenance for employee unions, etc. So I think it's important to have that strategy, because we never can predict how quickly the government's going to move. We know that the government needs to move, but I would say that there needs to be a strategy for being able to launch in the private pay market and build up that health economic story as you go, in order to eventually have a satisfying reimbursed part of the story. So there may be this bifurcation where you've got, okay, this is the medical device software as a medical device version. This is the healthcare monitoring version, and that's if large employers can see the health benefit for keeping their employees healthy, and they can see a cost savings there, then slowly you can build up that category or that catalog of evidence that could be used for convincing the government to reimburse it at a higher level. So Japan has come up with the ability to go back to the well for reimbursement if the first reimbursement you get is not satisfactory. So there's you can make a pact with the government to say we're going to not take reimbursement at this time, but after we produce this type of data, we're going to resubmit for reimbursement, and that can be done. It's called the challenge submission.
The challenge submission.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. One of our viewers is asking, in terms of medical advancements in Japan in the future, do you believe AI medical products has a big potential in contributing to the industry? And it sounds like you've just answered that question, that it does, but it's going to take more time in both the patient-paid and reimbursable market in order to get some traction and show evidence and outcomes to support that. Would you agree?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So, beyond the reimbursed healthcare system, certainly, drug discovery, huge area for AI, patient selection and data mining from hospital real world evidence and hospital databases, huge opportunity. So obviously those are not reimbursed. Those are just ways to build efficiency and save money and time. But you look, there's also, AI in hospital for programs that are also not reimbursed, which could be, as long as it's improving hospital operational efficiency, saving worker time, those programs can be implemented very quickly in hospitals. You'd need to get a regulatory approval as a medical device, but if it's in a category that's not a separately reimbursed medical device, it's in the sort of cover-all category, then those can be sold at free pricing to the hospital in the same way that a capital equipment would be sold. So those are available, and I think there's a lot of benefit and opportunity for those. AI onboarded onto medical devices, two ways that this could move. I mean, there's ways that there's certainly challenges to uploading data to AWS servers, or whether it's onshore or offshore, where it is, how the data anonymization is done following the HR7 FHIR protocol and making sure that it meets the government standards. There's that, but there's also an opportunity. We've seen some recently where companies have sort of onboard AI, where the device itself has everything on board that you ever need. Because what the regulatory authorities look at is they look at, okay, give us, if it's a software as a medical device or software as part of a medical device program, show us the expected timeline for upgrades on that, so we can then also plan, and we'll give you guidance on what we think needs to be, kind of a letter to file or a minor change or a new submission. What the PMDA doesn't like, because they can't really get their head around it, and I think it's the same with regulatory authorities around the globe, is if the AI is learning something somewhere that's not local to the device itself, what we've approved today is not the same tomorrow. So how do we validate that that's still meeting the quality and safety and efficacy requirements that we've committed to when we gave the approval at the PMDA? So this is something that if there's a possibility to avoid offshore, or it's not offshore, but external analysis and AI, if the AI can be fully onboarded onto the device, that's going to make your life much easier.
Okay, one of our viewers is asking about how do you see the radiopharmaceuticals space in Japan? And of course, there's been a lot of buzz around this, no pun intended. There's been a lot of activity in the space recently because of manufacturing capabilities being set up in Japan by Big Pharma, but also HekaBio is involved with this. If you don't mind talking a little bit about that and your Alpha Tau program, because I know that's something very close to that you're very passionate about as well. Do you want to talk a bit about that and the radiopharmaceutical space in Japan?
Sure. Now, I'm not an expert on the general radiopharmaceutical space, but I'm very excited about it, and I'm reading about it every day, and it is very exciting to see the developments that are happening in that area for new isotopes. The government and there's the government, the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare. There's the Radioisotope Association. There's the National Nuclear Radiation Authority. There's many different authorities that are involved in this. So then they all need to come together and make decisions and give their blessing. So when a new isotope gets approved for use, this is a really big deal, and we do really we're really grateful for the receptiveness of those authorities to bringing in those new programs, and we're really delighted to be one of those. So ours with Alpha Tau, we're working on. It's actually a device. There was a big discussion of if it should be a device or a drug, but
Right.
in the end, it got regulated as a device. It's alpha radiation for the treatment of solid tumor cancers. We're extremely focused and very enthusiastic about that program, given the quality of the clinical results that we could achieve here in our clinical trial in Japan, but also what's being shown overseas. And Alpha Tau themselves are developing. They've chosen Japan as a key development area where they're doing large trials. They're doing sorry, not large, but many different trials in Israel, and Japan has been earmarked as one of the next countries to bring those new indications to. So we're very excited about that. So it's Israel, Canada, and the next one is Japan, because of the great key opinion leader support we have here and the government support that we have for the program itself. So we're really enthusiastic about making a big dent in certain cancer populations, because this very localized and safe radiation therapy, which also has it has the ability to essentially shrink the tumor right on site, as well as provide additional benefits to the immune system, which are coming out in papers. Yeah, I shouldn't talk too much about that, but they're searchable on the web.
Compliance, I know.
Yeah. So we're very excited about that.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost out of time, and I know a lot of people might have other meetings from 6, but are there any other last words that you'd like to share, Rob, in terms of a message to use this platform to amplify to the public, both those online right now and those that are watching later on?
Thanks a lot. So if you're already in Japan, thank you. This is a great place to be. If you're thinking about Japan, please do make some moves here. I'm sure Ryan could give you some free advice. I can give you some free advice. We're all very motivated to see more activity in the healthcare space here in Japan for the benefits of our friends, the doctors, and certainly the patients. So thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's been great to engage with you today about the ins and outs of the industry. And I'd like to invite everyone to join us in our next webinar on June the 6th. And this will be with Stefan Perry, General Manager of Cytiva Japan. For those of you following the series, the global CEO of Cytiva was our first ever webinar speaker, Emmanuel Ligner, talking about accelerating innovative therapies amidst a global talent gap. And Stefan is going to be speaking about this and directly as it relates to the talent gap here in Japan and how essential certain skill sets are for them in order to help Japanese pharma companies manufacture monoclonal antibodies and vaccines and so on here in Japan. So Made in Japan Pharma is back. Will the global talent gap be a fatal or a differentiating factor for the industry? Check out that event on LinkedIn soon. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you again, Rob. Bring you back on screen one last time. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. All the best with you. And as always, we're here to support with your talent needs.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.